Singularity. We're making a space game set in space where you fly spaceships. And these spaceships have factories inside. So in a recent video, I think I'll just quickly give you a quick demo. And then the next thing I'm just going to quickly do is promote the stream real fast. I like to promote the stream once the stream's running. It seems weird to me to do a stream lead up, which is the correct way to do this. But I don't think do things the correct way because I'm still figuring stuff out. Anyway, bear with me. So I'll just quickly show you my game. Now I get asked really often what this graphic is you can see here. So I want, if you will, to have a close look at the shape of these two ships, and then have a look at the shape of the ships that are here, and you'll see that this little notch here is the same notch that's missing down here. Anyway, while you're studying that and thinking about how cool it is to draw our ships in ASCII out, let me just quickly do a bit of self-promotion. I'm going to jump on Reddit and tell people that I'm here. Otherwise, no one else will watch apart from the people who already know who I am. So, bear with me. It seems, yeah, self-promotion is hard. Let's see. One thing I've found really difficult about streaming is that I already have a tendency to go fast, and it makes me go even faster. So, currently streaming, please jump on and watch. So I'm just going to put a link here. This is going in the Rust game dev. I've got a thread already active there that mentions my stream. So I'm just going to copy. I'm wondering if I should swap these two. So when I look that way, because right now it's inverted, right? So anyway, I should probably mirror my camera feed or swap the two screens as far as you can see them so that my face looks the correct way. I noticed when I was watching my recordings it's facing the wrong way. Currently streaming, please jump on and watch. And then I'm going to just go across to watching people code where, well, honestly, I find it a bit strange that people watch me code. I think it's really awesome. I think it's amazing. I mean, like, I guess I underrate how the experience of having coded for so long is interesting to watch. Create post, link, URL. That's my link. And what do I normally say? Today we're gonna fix physics collider issues. Play with inputs and Rust plus Go dot TRS for the recall singularity, which is me, and that's the right link. Post. So that second one is, I'll just pop that in the chat room so you can see what I meant by that's where I put the that link. Okay, so now everyone knows that I'm on. I feel embarrassed writing about it on Twitter. But why not? Join the stream. Fixing collision issues. Issues experienced in physics. And I put the link. Oops, not the Watch People Code link. I want to put the Twitch link. So I was wondering about the possibility of writing a blog entry on stream about what I'm doing. Would that be interesting? Or do modeling on stream, or do texturing on stream? I haven't done any of that graphical stuff. It's all been code so far. Physics, game dev, tweet. Oh, I find it really hard to put myself out there. Honestly, I just need to push through. Oh, Ardwani, don't worry, my friend. If you were to start following some tutorials from, for example, Blender Guru, you would pick stuff up real fast. I mean, like me, you've tinkered in 3D with doing your own code and collisions and stuff. You'd find actually that working with Blender isn't as hard as it seems. You should just give it a shot. I mean, just to, well, Well, I feel like it would be wasteful to jump in and show you too much now, but trust me, if you just create a cube and extrude some stuff, it would doesn't take very long. So this down here is my ASCII art. I was kind of thinking for a couple of reasons. I haven't checked my camera. Is my camera? Yep, camera's good. One reason to do the ASCII art that you see here and describe the ship this way is that, so you see this little pound symbol, those are the yellow boxes, the storage boxes here, and then these little arrows, they represent the conveyors here, these conveyors. And then this border represents the wall. And then the cross represents the 0 coordinate, which is in the middle of the ship. And so this other one here is the other shape. So if you look carefully, you see the x-axis goes across this way, and that represents the top row here. So, a good point, Adwani. You don't worry. You could do it, man. Just do it. But there's no harm in giving you the link again, because I kind of mentioned it a second time for the other people on stream. So at least there's that. It's like I know something or something. Close the game, close the server. So the problem I've got at the moment, in fact, I should open the game again and demonstrate it to you. We'll just see if it still happens, because it's always embarrassing when you fix a bug that actually you can't reproduce anyway. So let me show you these ship movements. I'm using cursor keys on my keyboard. I can rotate this ship. And it always rotates the same ship. It always rotates this top one. And I can move it. So here I am moving it. The way it moves, it's hard to explain the cursor controls, but it always moves on the axis, doesn't care which way it's facing. So you see how they collide, and the place where they collide is on the walls when the ships first started. So if I quit out of that, I need to quit at the moment because the ships tilt up when they crash, and because they tilt up and I don't have a way to, I'm not keeping them clamped. So I need to spring. I love the ASCII. I need to set up a spring of some kind that pulls them back down to level, which is a feature of NPhysics I can use. NPhysics is the Rust physics system. This is not Godot physics we're using here. This is Rust physics we're using. We are drawing it using Godot. If you watch previous streams, you'll see how it's synchronized. Now, oh gosh, I turned it already. If I go to build a floor, so say I built here, so I've just changed the size of the ship. And I built here, so I changed the size of that ship. The bug is that the border where it used to be, which is along this line here, and where it used to be here along that line, is where it will actually crash. The parts I just built will overlap. So you'll see how those don't have colliders. The collider hasn't been updated. So if the ship rotates 180 degrees, I assume you're not meaning rotating this way. So you're talking about rotating upside down. I don't have a button that can demonstrate to you, but all you'll see is the underside of the floor model. In fact, if we wait, I think it's going to happen. Let's crash them again and see if we can cause them to tip over faster. Yeah, I may have just messed it up. Oh, here we go. So you can see how the extension of the floor is in 3D. So all you can see is the bottom of the relevant mesh. And the lights are on the wrong side because the lights are rotating to remain on top. This is a floor extension tool. Wow, doesn't that look cool? Man, I could just watch this all day. Okay, so there's the other side. So, you know, it'll be fun to be more creative with it. It really is just a floor and walls. It's kind of amazing how our imagination creates even more to the ship than there really is. I love 3D, man. I get so much for free. I get so much for free out of just rendering my 2D game in 3D. There needs to be some limits for the rotation. Yeah, totally. Okay. But we're not going to worry about that right now. Oh, check out the ASCII art for the ship now that I've extended it. It's the slightly extended ship. Okay. Oh, you should have seen the ship that my son created in it, a 4-year-old. Let's see if I can find it for you real quick. Pictures. I'm not sure if I saved this one. Yeah, this one. I call it Max Made It. There's a screenshot of his creation. This is back before the walls were automatically placed. He was having such a fun time. Anyway, okay. So the problem we have, and let me just kind of slow down a bit, and remember this, is that here in this routine, it gets called every time that the collider should change, but this doesn't actually change the collider. So I tried a much more drastic option, which was to replace the collider like this. But replacing the collider caused a crash. So when I ran that simulation and I ran that server, it would basically panic straight away. Or would it? Maybe it panicked when I drew extra floor. I think that's what happened. It worked fine up until the moment I drew extra floor, and then that would recreate the collider and it would blow up. Floor build. Yeah, so you see the client has panicked, so now it's got a poison mutex, and this one panicked here and the server quit. So that's one, Adwania. I'm glad you appreciate why that's so good. Okay. My kids are the best. I really love this game so far. Pardon me, I might just blow my nose. Hold on. Okay, that's done. Sorry about that. So we've got a problem where when I update the floor twice in a row, it causes an exception. So it's pretty straightforward to have a look at the floor tests. Let's have a look at how the floor tests here. I've got some tests that make floors and modify them with a floor instance. So I'm going to just quickly bring those tests across. So here's a test that makes a donut, right, like so. But this test is going to it's just going to be what's called a smoke test. It's going to be enough of a test that's going to cause the physics engine to blow up. So we can cause the panic inside a test. So so change colliders. And to change colliders, we need to create a floor and apply a mask, and then call this function update floor. And when we call update floor, so that's our static function in space. So first we get a space weld. So I don't know why it keeps putting my indent out. It's like something's wrong with this code. Anyway, let weld equal, there's a space has a build function that returns a weld specifically for space. So to create a weld in space, we just use space build, and then we want to update the floor. So update floor takes a weld, takes a floor, takes a weld ID, a ship weld ID. So we need to have created a ship which this floor is going to go inside. So we need to use add spaceship to make one. So let ship equal weld dot add spaceship. What's the? I can't remember I can never remember the shortcut key that will show me what the parameters are for this. Weld x lock y lock bounds child weld. Okay, so weld x lock is where I want it to be, 0.0. Y lock is 0.0. That's where I want it to be. The size is called bounds. I don't think that's actually important, but I can use floor bounds or extents. And then the last one is child world. We'll just use global world ID 1. So we've now made the ship in the outer world. So if we had an inner world, we'd make that now and we'd, add it to a sector, but we're not doing that. In this unit test, we're just updating the outer world, which is the one with stars and tracks where the ships are. So we need to world floor and the ID again. I might just extract this as the constant. There's ways of doing this, but I can just go extract variable, and that's the variable I want, and replace both occurrences and give it the name world ID. I can't figure out why it keeps indenting here. It's like I've missed something that's making this not a proper test block. I honestly can't see what it is. I probably missed some bracket or something. I'm sure as soon as I try and compile, it's going to be obvious what's wrong. I want to. So this is inside the simulation test, so we're going to run those. So doing the physics once should just work. Let's have a look. Where is this? I missed the curly bracket semicolon there. This world. Oh, I probably need to use a mutable reference to world here, and then I need to make this mutable so I can change the world. And I have a look at what add spaceship returns. I don't want world.add. I need to use two braces because this is. So I need to use space like this. What does this return? This returns nothing. So it makes a spaceship without returning it. Do I need it returned? No, I don't even need the ship because I'm specifying its world. There are some people arguing outside. It is slightly distracting. So you do a mutable pointer. Mismatched types. So it wants me to use fixed 64, which is my type here, and from float. Like so. Here we go. Great. That should compile now. Okay, so now it's complaining that I've borrowed the floor. So this floor extent seems to be cloned probably, but let's just check. Uh, 70. Looking at a different place. 179. Value moved where? 178? Yes. Well, I'm 178. Floor is moved. This update floor. Oh, yep, that takes a copy. So I don't even need all these asserts here anyway. So my expectation is that this will not crash and the test will pass just fine. But other tests have failed. What is currently failing? Okay, so there's a number of tests that are trying to access resources that I haven't actually added. The reason why these are failing is because I added a resource for when I was doing the sector. Here, I created one that took events. Set up events. And I had this idea of a ship to space object. And then there's all these places that are using the ship to space object and it doesn't exist. And so those places are blowing up. So easiest thing to do in those places would be to check for the ship to space, and if it doesn't exist, to not use it. So there's a fetch optional function, I believe, where I can this is something I used last time, so try fetch. And so if I put try fetch here, comms turns into an option. So we're going to unpack it. So if there is a way of, this is so that I can have my inner world, which is executing an action, the one inside a ship. It's executing an action to do with modifying the floor. I wanted to tell the sector, which kind of manages the outer world, that the floor has changed, to try and make the synchronization work better. So I need to get some kind of information out, and I do it using this object, but the object may not have been initialized, especially in a test. And so the tests are failing when the object is not initialized. Here we go, back to 119 tests passed. This test, it will probably pass again if I update the floor, several times in a row, with the same floor. And I expect if I try and actually update from the world in, it will panic. So if I call space update, is it do tick? I can't remember if it's update or do tick. It's probably update. Yes, this is one called update that I want to call. So if I use space update and pass it the mutable world, which is what I do every tick of the space world, I call this function. So if I do this a few times, I reckon that the second time here it's going to panic. Okay, so that panicked, but we got a stack trace. And this stack trace is exactly what we want to have. So let's have a look through. So here is the test. Here is where it called the update function. We go into the update function here. Let's run now. Go into physics. I might just simplify my editor so it only has one side for the purposes of streaming and showing this to you. Let me just organize this a bit better. And then I will close other stuff. And then I'll close all of these. Okay, and we don't need this. And I'll make this a bit bigger for you, like so. Okay. So we're back to climbing up the stack. So I was up to physics. So this is still my function here. And then we step into specs physics. So we go through shred, this run now concept, and then we go into the specs physics. Now I made a decision for specs physics that I was going to download the whole Git repository. It's a submodule of my repository, and it was at the head at the time that I started. The head may have changed in the last couple of weeks. So this problem's happening inside Update Collider, which isn't a massive surprise, and physics collider.handle.unwrap. So it's expecting that we have. So we're triggering the Update Collider function for some reason. Probably the reason why is there's a component that is looking for, and it's expecting that the physics collider's handle is still going to be valid. But the physics collider's handle is not valid because I've actually completely replaced the physics collider with a new instance. This code does not expect that to happen. So if modified physics colliders dot contains, so this modified physics colliders is from these events, and I would say that this is a feature of specs where if you change the storage it tells you what's happened. So the iterate component events goes through all the inserted, modified and removed and adds them all to the relevant lists. So we haven't triggered the removed handler. I wonder if I explicitly remove it and then explicitly put it back in, it would treat that as being or do I need to yeah, so that implies that one workaround on my side is to use a different function. You do different functions. Let's try that. So we'll just go into space, and where was it that I called? We're going to change update floor. So right now we call the insert routine to modify the colliders. But what would happen if instead of just using insert, first we use delete? Remove. And we pass in the entity. So first we're going to remove the old collider, then we're going to insert a new one. Is it still going to smoke? No, the smoke test no longer smokes. So it doesn't fail, which means that this workaround has actually fixed the problem. So I might just quickly jump on GitHub and go to Specs Physics. I don't think there's anything too identifiable about this browser tab. We'll see. Anyway, so if we go to Specs Physics and have a look at the issues. I'm going to create a new issue. If you use dot insert on unwrap to fail. And then what happens is one, create a collider and do a tick. 2, replace that with a new collider using insert. 3, and this is a really bad repo steps. I'm doing the low effort version because I really don't want to spend too long doing this properly. I could probably create a pull request that fixes this or something similar, but it would require a good hour. And I don't really want to. We'll see if they come back with questions and get confused. I might do it off stream because where was that exception initially? I believe it was in sync colliders to physics, and there was add collider, there's update collider, and it was this line that crashes. Is created by specs, not remove and insert. Line in sync sliders to physics update collider. Well, panic. Work around So the assert space, the one that caused the problem was system. Well, I really can't say anything other than .assert using use move first. Submit new issue. Yeah. Hopefully they don't find that too confusing. I might even put a YouTube video up to clarify. I mean, it is like I recorded it. Or I could make a pull request. It would take me ages. I'm just really concerned about how much time that would take. It's very selfish of me. Anyway, so with that problem solved, we can now expect to be able to update the physics collider and have it not overlap as we build new floors. Just trying to run the server. So there's a server running. Here's the game loading. So these are both compiling. So what next? We could investigate a spring. We probably should investigate a spring because that's going to cause a real nuisance. So these ships always flipping over. Oh, you notice the UI doesn't scale properly yet. That'll be something to do later. Okay, so here's a test. We're going to build some floor. Doesn't crash. Doesn't crash. That's a good start. We're going to turn the ship. Okay, I'm thrusting it away rather than turning it. Here we go. Is it going to collide? Come on. Oh no. Why didn't it collide? Why didn't it collide at all? So the colliders aren't even set up now. That's really interesting. So I've exercised another problem. I wonder if I needed to do something crazy like wait one frame and then insert the colliders again. Like it's done a removal after it's done an addition. That's really weird. Yeah, let's have a look at the sync colliders to physics logic. Because what's going to happen when I do what I did is it's going to create both a add physics collider and a removed physics collider. So here it is inserting, here it is modifying, here it is removing. In fact, if I had to look at the debug output, I should be able to see that. So the fix could be to remove them first, then insert them. So here I'm changing the physics code. I'm not particularly keen on that, but if it's what's required in order to debug it. The other option is to put an if statement in. We know here, where is the, we use update collider here, and we pass it the ID, and then we use physics collider. See, that's the thing, is that physics collider dot handle. So the cleanest thing to do is going to be to go back into the physics, and actually we might just fix this. It's probably not very hard to fix. So first thing, we need to put the removed one at the top. Second thing, in case someone else does what we did, which is remove it and then insert it, because obviously in that case you need to do the removal insertion. Let's just prove that the removal insertion worked, because that's what I just did and I'm testing it now. So we'll just quickly test that works, because I bet it will. Turning, moving, come on. It's very easy to forget my controls because they're really weird. Yeah, so that's now working. So see, the physics of the built floors is working correctly. So that was because I swapped the remove, so it happens before the inserts. The other thing we need to fix is that in here, We could just do a fix-up pass here. If modified physics colliders dot contains ID and physics dot body handles. So update. It was just handle dot. Is it just handle? I think it was. Is none. So if there's no handle in this thing because we just created a new one, user actually just replaced this collider. And then what we can do is, so here I am making the patch that I said I wasn't going to make. Oh well. Yeah, so we need to add a margin around our floors. Floor. So in here we need to add a margin around our floors. And the way to do that is to flood fill for build collider. So find physics tiles from floor. Right? Got extension floor. But what we actually need to do is to ask the physics system, the cleanest thing is to ask the production floor for a list of its modules. The more crazy way is to flood slightly. So when we find tiles, I wonder how we can flood slightly very fast. There's probably a operation for it. You essentially want to bloom the floor so it expands in every direction. The other option is to change these tiles. So right here we've got the tile.offset. This is the tiles that are going to be colliders. We can also say, I think we've got to expand. So expand all the tiles by 1 unit. And that puts a border of exactly 1 unit around the entire square that we're going to pass the physics engine. So this should fix the wall problem. Anyway, thanks for the reminder. There's another way to put an extra margin, but I don't want to use it for this. That margin's for a different purpose. I want to make the collider actually correct. And now it will be, but unfortunately the colliders will overlap with each other. I don't think that really matters. Like the colliders inside the spaceship will overlap with each other. Run now. Where was I? I was in physics, and inside of physics I was in sync colliders, and in sync colliders we are going to detect that it's not really modified. We have to... Hey, we're Constructor, welcome aboard, nice to see you. We're fixing the problem with the colliders around the ship. So when you modify the colliders, they get updated. I think there's a remove. Is this not... Probably turns out that this is not... hold on. Hopefully we can modify these. Oh, it's probably easier to just say put a boolean here. Bool replaced collider equals this, and they'll probably complain in the PR that this is ugly. And it's if that or this. Inserted positions. Yeah, this or that. And down here, not this, or this, and that. Okay. So I've made a new variable that gets set true whenever we can detect that the collider's been replaced, not removed properly. And when it's been replaced, we need to remove it and then insert it again. It's not the most elegant solution, but it's enough to illustrate the problem so that the people who are developing this can create a better solution. Physics probably requires a smoke test which is specific to them rather than specific to me. But hey, let's open space again. Go to the smoke test in question, have a look at update floor, go into here. We no longer need this remove statement, and it should no longer crash. I got this line wrong. I'm referring to our handle here incorrectly. So I just need to find out what the real name is, and the real name is inside the modify update collider. So it's physics collider.handle that I'm interested in. Physics collider is the second argument here. So if I go back to where this is called, it's called physics collider here. Up here it's also called physics collider. .get unchecked. What does get unchecked do? What is physics collider? Oh, I see. Physics collider is the what we're joining on as a component. So what I'm doing is I'm using specs in Godot, and then I'm looking at the different libraries that make up Amethyst, and I'm stealing parts from them. So I've stolen specs already, which is the ECM used by Amethyst. I've stolen InPhysics and Sync Physics, specs physics, which are also from Amethyst. So you could say that I am mixing Amethyst and Godot. That is correct. But I'm not going to take the renderer. And I'm taking the physics because I'm going to use it in the server. So I need it to sync up with the client. So I can't really use the Go.physics. So that's where we're at, Togglebit. Thanks for the question. Please ask any more if I missed something. So if you have a look at... and I strongly considered using Amethyst itself right from the start. So specs physics is a library we are using, and as you can see, it's part of the Amethyst project. So have a look at Amethyst. I'm not sure if I can go straight to the project page. Here we are, amethyst.rs. So this is a Rust game development engine, but when you do research on it, you'll see that actually it's still somewhat early stages. It doesn't yet have an editor like Godot has. There's lots of things that aren't finished, and so it felt sensible to not use it just yet, which basically means I'm not going to use it for this project, unfortunately. But what I can do is use all the different components. So there's quite a few components I'm using from Amethyst. So I'm not using animation, assets, audio, config, controls, core, derive, error, GL input, locale. I thought about using network, not using Rendy, test, tiles, UI, utils. Wow. The core though contains specs and so on, and I think that's the part I'm using. Anyway, that's Amethyst. It has useful Rust game stuff, and I'm stealing what I can. And I'm stealing ideas like using specs, for instance. I'm only using specs because Amethyst uses it. So it seemed like a really good idea, and now that I'm using it, I like it. So I'm just trying to figure out how to detect if the physics collider... So I don't know what type physics collider is. It appears to be a component from specs. See here it's... we should be able to go... Does that fix it? Okay, that compiles now. That's pretty ugly. Oh well, ugly is better than nothing. Amethyst needs to bring up the editor, yeah. That's not going to have an editor for a long time. I'm just trying to imagine myself trying to hire other people. Okay, so remember how I added that expand statement to make the floors bigger to contain the walls? Well, not surprisingly, what it's done is it's made these tests fail. I might just move the expand to a different place. So here's where I expanded it, and I'm just going to move it so that it's in the colliders for floor area instead. No, that's not right. That's not what I want to do. So this is just so it's just been pointed out to me that if I made the if I make the collider slightly bigger, yeah. Okay, so the test of asking again. So let's just see what that looks like in game. So one thing, the smoke test doesn't smoke. So my changes to the physics synchronization have probably worked okay. Did the server just quit because it didn't compile? No, it's just gone behind. Okay. Oh, interesting. I seem to be running. I seem to have been running a server all along. So I need to just quit this server and do that again, because otherwise what will happen is, well, a couple of things. The server's running old code now, so it'll disagree with the client. But the second problem is that, which won't actually cause a big deal because I'm not enforcing synchronization at the moment. Later on, I'll be doing tests on the client and server to make sure they're in sync, but I'm not doing those yet. So we ignore the fact that the client gets out of sync. So let's turn this around and. Interesting. Why is the ship not turning? Oh, it is turning. There we go. It's turning a lot slower. Is it because of the extra floors, probably? Interesting. Okay, so now it's... Oh, I know why it's moving so much slower. It's because we've got a ship made out of lots of little colliders, and every one of those colliders is bigger, and so overall the ship seems bigger. So yeah, we might need to do that bloom thing I talked about earlier to make that work correctly. So there was a way when you made a cuboid to specify how big. There was some sort of offset. I can't remember if that was a world thing or a collider thing. Let's do a look in space, because I think it mentions in here what the offset is. It's not particularly something I wanted to use for this purpose, but it could still work. No, it's probably in the world setup. Space. But there was this idea of setting an offset between physics things so they don't actually overlap to collide. I can't remember where the setting was. Like a margin setting. No, I'm drawing a blank at the moment. It's probably in the physics collider builder. Yeah, margin. So we can specify here what the margin's going to be overall. I wonder if we added a margin here if it would work better. So when we call update floor and we just say, if we said dot margin and we added 0.5, which is a massive margin, would that be this is exactly the solution that Adwani suggested, by the way. We'll see if that is better than the other option where we expanded the boxes. So when I expanded boxes, I did it inside floor, I think. Ship box. show floor tiling. And the expand was just here. So if we remove this, let's see how well this works. Server still running, so let's quit that. Server, client. Let's see. I don't mind, I won't hold it against you if it doesn't work, Adwani. It was worth experimenting with. I appreciate the idea. Okay, so that's good. So 0.5 probably isn't enough margin. I probably need slightly more. But you'll see that it's still a lot better than it was before. I don't want 1.5. The walls aren't actually one unit thick. The walls are a bit less than 1 unit. So if I make it too much margin, I don't actually mind some visible overlap. I'd rather some visible overlap than them kissing but not reaching each other. It seems weirder to have an invisible wall. I don't know. That was pretty good. Okay, let's just quickly commit this. I might not do the whole pull request process on camera because it takes a long time, and I get a bit of time during the day to do various things. So we'll just quickly commit so that way I've got a nice blank slate. I like to. So what we just accomplished is we have fixed a problem where I couldn't change colliders. Is colliding with a ship going to cause damage? Problem with yeah, I'm more in the realm of pushing without causing a great deal of damage than causing heaps of damage, because I don't really want player versus player, and if ramming causes player damage, then that's player versus player, even if you don't have guns. We might do player versus player later, but yeah, I can't see any way that you could do crashes and do real damage without that being really punitive. In a variety of ways. I want the game, like, it's tuned for fun. Crashing into things and them getting broken is usually not a great deal of fun, even if it is somewhat realistic. Yeah. But for now, it's just, yeah, for now it's just going to be pushing stuff. Pushing stuff around could also be quite punitive. You might build a giant ship that can collect someone else's ship and take it somewhere they don't want to go. That's quite cruel as well. So, how do we manage that problem? Anyway, specs physics. So this is the specs physics branch. We've made some changes to this one file. Fix issue where colliders cannot be modified. Now, I may not have done this the best way. This started because when I changed the shape, I was kind of ignored. It didn't do anything with that information when I changed the shape. So then I went to completely replacing the collider, which caused a crash. And so that what you just saw was a diff to fix the crash. So now that the submodule's done, we can just go and commit the. Do I have this? Yeah. Anyway, so this is working ship movement with collisions that adapt to floor changes. Okay. Great. So that's pretty good. What next? We had a problem where the ships tilted up when they crashed. That was quite annoying. We should better tone that down by adding a spring. I don't know how hard it is to add an in-physics spring. Well, actually, the API I want is docs.rs and we want the spring. So we want specs physics, which is this one. Search. And is there a spring in here? No. So let's have a look at the in physics docs. In fact, I'll just do it from here. I searched in the wrong place. You had to click up here. So given in physics 3D, I want springs and stuff, joints, utils, volumetric. So what we want is something like a joint. So a planar constraint will force the ship to not move by physics off one axis. This ensures the body moves on only one plane with respect to its parent. So that implies that we create a parent somehow. So I wonder if Specs Physics handles constraints. No. There are a whole bunch of questions we can ask ourselves that would probably require a lot of study of in physics to fix this problem. The real issue is that we don't want rotation outside of a particular axis. We don't really want momentum outside of a particular axis. We could impose a constraint every frame. It's not as good as using this. The problem is that it's body part handle. Is it like an anchor or something? Yeah. Okay, so when we're talking about in physics, I don't particularly want to go on the path of researching how to do it properly at the moment. So we've got a quaternion, which is the rotation. I wonder if we can calculate, or it's going to keep on having momentum across multiple axes. Yeah, I'm thinking something similar, Adewani. I'm wondering if I should just get the quaternion of the rotation from the position every single frame and just clamp it back to 0 for all the other axes, and just do that every single frame, and just it's going to probably cause some weird side effects, but it would fix the problem for a while. I'm not sure how to project the three-dimensional rotation onto a two-dimensional plane. Although I bet there's a way of asking a quaternion to do that for us. Other than that, so here's where we update the ship's X and Y, X and Z location. So to get the rotation, yeah. So let's take this on, okay? So, we'll remove others. So the current goal is just to limit the rotation. When two ships collide, they can rotate like this or like that, and we don't want that. So if I'm looking, if the plane, this is the plane of the game here, I want them to stay on that plane. I don't want them to do this. I only want to be able to rotate like that. So this is what we're trying to solve. I'm sure that was really clear. So let's open GD ship link, was it space? It's Star World link. And in this, I think it was yesterday or the day before on camera, we figured out how to get the rotation and how to get the different axes of rotation out by using this axis angle. So let's just grab this code, and it uses the pos, which we have right here as well. So these are all the different things that we know about where the ship is. So you've got translation, we've got rotation. We'll just change this to just say translation. And then for at the end, we're going to go pos dot 0 dot translation dot z y equals 0.0, like so. This is how we're going to clamp the ship so it's not allowed to drift off that axis. And then let's have a look at the rotation. So the rotation is what's called a quaternion. Might be easier to look this up in DocsRS. So unit quaternion for lucid. Okay, that didn't help. Let's just look it up directly in here. So we're looking for EULICID. Okay. Let's have a quick, careful read here. That white is so bright. Oh, it's in algebra I'm looking for actually. Find crate. N-A-L. Let's here. In algebra. Ta-da! Looking for unit quaternion. So what we want to know is how to project the quaternion down to a single plane, and then to create a new quaternion we can assign from that. Rotation to lerp, n lerp, s lerp, dry slurp, conjugate, inverse axis, scaled axis, axis angle, excellent power, to rotation axis to Euler angles. Oh, there we go. Roll, pitch and yaw. One of those three, I'm not sure which one, but let's just assume the second one is exactly the one we want. I'm not sure why these two have two different names. Oh, I see, it's been renamed. Okay. So, back to physics. No, we're doing this in yes. Okay. So, let ship facing equal rotation dot into Euler. Is what's it called? I believe that's what it's called. No, Euler angles. So Euler angles is going to return three angles, and I believe they're x, y, and z. Now, I don't care about the first one, which is the x rotation. I don't care about the last one, which I believe is the z rotation. So, by getting just the middle one, I get the ship facing. Now, what's nice about that is I can then go into my spaceship declaration, and I can put in a facing because I wanted one of these. Make another fixed. Now we probably could get away with using something else other than that, but I'll go with that for now. As a type, I mean. So, ship dot facing equal ship facing. We're going to cast this to a fixed 64 from float, like so. Now the reason why I'm putting things in fixed 64s is in theory because I want to ensure that all my mathematics is done in a type that is deterministic on all platforms no matter the float behavior, but In this particular case, I'm not sure it's actually making sense because I'm really just dealing with F32s for this, and maybe I should just stop being so pedantic. It was partially because I wasn't sure how much the physics was going to diverge. This is going to be something to refactor later, I'm pretty certain. Anyway, so that's just so that the ship now has all the information we need for Godot in it. Not that we're going to use it anyway. Now we need to change the rotation. So we're going to change pos.0.rotation to equal. Can we actually set this? It may not be mutable. In fact, we've only got a read storage for pos. So we're going to change this to a write storage. We're going to change the positions to be mutable because we're going to change those in a second. We're about to start clamping them, which is why they need to be mutable. Pos is an isometry 3. Now, so let's have a look at isometry as a class. I need to be able to assign a new rotation into it. You got a rotation and a translation. You got a routine called from parts. So we could call from parts and just pass in new parts every frame. That would work. Or we could just change the rotation. So yeah. So in physics, we'll just see if we can just set it directly. So we're going to say, I think we can say rotation is equal to a Newtonian. Unit quaternion. How do we change that? Into owned, cloned owned angle quaternion, which is the underlying quaternion. Conjugate inverse angle 2, rotation 2, lerp, and lerp is loop, invert. I really want some way of making it from Euler. Is there a from Euler? From Euler angles. Creates a new unit quaternion from Euler angles, which is absolutely perfect. So what I want to say is that pos zero's rotation is now equal to this class unit quaternion from Euler, and we're going to specify that there's no rotation on that axis. There is ship facing rotation on that axis, and there's no rotation on that axis. Now it might turn out that I've actually chosen the wrong axis for this. It'll be pretty obvious very fast. So I've just manually clamped. So the rotation of this ship every frame should really be using. I'm going to mention this class. There's a class here for anchoring that we found a moment ago in physics, which was called a planar constraint. But unfortunately, to create a in physics joint planar constraint, it turns out we need to have another object to constrain it to. I kind of need to add an object to the origin and say this is where all the ships are. I like it even better if we could have a spring constraint that moved with the ship, so that it would actually rock and then it would fall back to being on the level. That would be ideal. I'd like something that I could use to alert between levels, but the thing is that at the moment I want to contain the amount of complexity, and so whatever's going to give me the minimum complexity to meet the needs is what I want, and then down the track we're going to evolve from there to a fully fledged perfect game in every possible way. Okay, so something went wrong with the build process, but it's not showing me the result for some reason. I must have forgotten to put a pause in there, so I was going to build it here. Okay, so it's complaining that when I create a new spaceship, I forget to put a facing value in here. So for facing, we're going to make a fixed 64 from float 0.0 like so, and that's going to be facing. The next problem is this from Euler doesn't seem to exist. Okay, so it doesn't say Euler, it says from Euler angles. Okay, cannot assign to the rotation which is behind a non-mutable reference. The reason why is I need to put the word mute up here so that I'm allowed to change. I don't need to put it there, I need to put it here. So when I'm joining, I need to tell join that I want a mutable position that I can change. You can't tell, but the server was running this whole time, so that's why that didn't work. But we should now be able to run it into the batch file, and also the game. There's the game. There's a server. So here is our spaceships. Let's crash them together because that's what one does with spaceships. Can I rotate it? Yes, it still rotates. That's really great. So that means we're rotating the correct axis. So here are two spaceships moving. So you'll notice that they are staying pretty much constrained to the correct axis, which is really great. So I'm thrusting this other ship. So you can see it's juddering a bit. So that juddering is a bit concerning. Or is it just a problem to do with frame rate? We probably need some interpolation between the frames. Anyway, let's stop this other ship. Let's see if we can crash into it and stop it. Come on, come here. Doof. And we'll stop you. I could play this all day. It's like I like playing spaceship games or something. So I'm creating upwards thrust at the moment to try and stop this other ship. Let's see if we can spin it. So, oh, I missed it. Blast. I'm not really paying attention to what I'm doing, am I? You can tell. It's not listening to my inputs. My thrust is too weak. My ship's going too fast. Here we go. Weak. Anyway. So, Togglebit asks, do I use Rust do I have a public Git repo where I use the two together? And the answer is no, unfortunately, I don't. But what I have got for you is I've got a number of published stories on Medium, and in particular, you'll be interested in reading this one here called Gorgeous Godot Games in Rust. So, this Gorgeous Godot Games in Rust is basically a tutorial on how to set it all up, and it even mentions the library you should use, and I'll even give you a friend link. Copy, because you're my friend. Here you go. And that means you can just read it without having to use up any red medium points or whatever the hell. And later on, I'll move it across to my own thing. There's lots of other articles there, and there's a Discord channel. You'll find that both Adwani and oh, you're most welcome, sir. Both Adwani and Word Constructor are active on the Discord, and they are also working on their own projects that are using both Rust and Godot, as there are a few others. So if you jump on our Discord channel, you can ask us lots of questions, and you'd be most welcome. I'm just going to edit the invite so that it lasts longer. Max number, nope, and expire after never. Max number of users, no limit. Great, a link, copy. And please drop by, say hello, we're friendly, and hang out with us. We'd love to see you. And get us to promote your game to us. We'd like to hear about it. Okay. So we've constrained it to one axis. That's pretty cool. That was really exciting. I saw a bit of juddering in there. It's possible that the way I'm constraining it is doing something to the physics engine every frame that's messing it up. It's also possible that the juddering is just because we're not doing interpolation in properly between positions. So every frame, it would make sense to figure out exactly where we are in the physics between the two frames. We're not paying attention to the frame timings. We're only moving the objects on the physics tick. So if my frame rate moves in and out of sync with the physics, it's going to cause juddering, which I could just see. It's probably hard to see on stream compared to how easy it is to see for me, because I can see a higher frame rate. It's very, very subtle. Okay, so now I'm just trying to figure out what the next goal is. Okay, let me walk you through the concept. The server's still running, so I'm going to quit the server and start it again, so the ships haven't moved yet. So on screen, you're going to see a little pink person, and that person is my is a model I threw together in like 1 hour to if that, I think it was get in game in 1 hour type thing, to represent the player. So if I just zoom in and have a look over here, I can wander this little person around my arrow keys, and when I look at something, it pops up with this little use E thing. So the idea is that if we create in our world a flight desk, that's supposed to be the place that you wander a little person over. You go, oh yes, I'd like to use a flight desk. Oh, I go over here and I push E, but I don't put my legs in it. And once you push E, the game will go, you're now flying the ship. And then you'll be like, I'm flying a ship, whee! In fact, now that I mention it, I should probably put the person on this ship for this demonstration. So, he's on this ship. Oh wow, that juddering is quite interesting, check that out. So this is the problem, is I'm not removing the velocity, so that's probably the reason why we're getting the juddering before. It's because every frame the physics is trying to rotate the ship, and I'm putting it back in the same place. So we probably need to figure out how to negate the momentum on the other axes. It's really interesting. So it won't let me go negative past a certain point. It's like it only allows a positive rotation. Yeah. That's really weird. So there's some funny quirk to this use Euler angles thing that I don't know about. That was probably the bug I was looking at before. Interesting. I think the cool example I was just describing, we'll have to wait while I just spend a bit more time thinking about this problem, because it would be really nice if we can get rid of that. I don't want it to sit here twitching too long, so I'm just going to, I don't know, close the game. There's a well-known thing about Euler angles that the axes can flip upside down as you rotate through a certain point. So you can be here and you rotate 100 degrees and something goes doop and jumps to the other side, and then rotates on the other side around. And that's probably exactly what we're seeing in this situation, which is a problem that Quaternions are supposed to solve. It's one danger of doing what I'm doing. So maybe if I use, which is using Euler angles. You really don't want to be using Euler angles if you can avoid it. I was just kind of hacking it up. Create a new quaternion from a unit vector, the rotation axis, and an angle, the rotation angle. This could be the other solution. If we create an axis vector that points upwards, we can use from axis angle. So we need to see if we can calculate what the axis angle is. So from axis angle, I'll just write that there as a reminder. Let's look for axis angle. Okay, so there's a routine here called axis angle. We ask it for the axis angle that currently exists, but I don't really want the current one. I want to specify an angle and find out the rotation on it. So let's see if there's anything that takes vectors, because that routine will take a vector. It's possible that those conjugates and stuff are actually doing that too, but I just don't even know it. There was actually a vector. I noticed there was a y-axis there. Why would I want a y-axis? So you see here there's a vector 3 y-axis. If I knew, yeah. Knowing that there's a vector 3 y-axis is handy. Transform point. Transform vector. Just trying to find a way to get what's the rotation around the y-axis. So given I'm trying to find the rotation on the y-axis, how can I rotate it with a quaternion? Rotation between. These rotation betweens could do it, but I don't know how yet. Quaternion maths, my eternal foe. What do I do? We didn't want the ship facing to be weird, but we've kind of stuffed things up in the process. This rotation is... yeah. Okay, so I'm going to just duck this problem for now. We're not going to copy the Euler angles back into the quaternion. So the ships are still going to flip upside down and do weird stuff. But at least we'll be able to rotate them. Or we could decide not to allow rotation at all in any way, and the ships had to stay on axis. But I think testing that they can rotate is very important. So I'll just take it as a given that I shouldn't be deliberately crashing the ships together most of the time. So if we go back to testing it now, we'll find that crashing the ships together will cause them to flip, but they can rotate just fine. And I'm sure that a bit of thinking I can solve this quaternion problem, but I don't want to try and just sit here on stream straining my face while you guys all get bored. So here's a demonstration of it rotating 360 degrees, and once again a demonstration of it crashing into the other ship, and we should see them roll up and do weird stuff again, because I'm no longer disabling that every frame. They're still juddering. It's a little bit annoying if I build one into the other. That was funny. So that's what happens when two colliders are set to be interacting. One was inside the other and they just pushed apart. Cool. Okay, Togglebit. Well, I wish you the best of luck. I'm glad you're enjoying the tutorial. Keep us updated. Welcome to the Twitter, by the way, Elton. Thanks to everyone who's following me on Twitter. If you're watching, I really do appreciate having these friends. I didn't want to kind of sound silly saying thank you to every single individual person who joined, but it does really thrill me that I have like 187 followers and that people care. It's really awesome. Really awesome. Like, making games. There was a time about six or 8 months ago where I felt really strong imposter syndrome and quite depressed about making games. Like, there was just a giant black hole of work in front of me, and just a few people saying a few nice things was enough to lift me out of that hole. And having the constant support I have now is really helping. So I appreciate it from everyone who does that. You know, from my friends, the ones who were with me right from the start. You know, they know who they are, and everyone else who's joined since, and people on Discord like Weird and Adwani, who are always there. That's really appreciated. And it's nice to be inspiring you guys. Now, I was going to make it so that the little player can be controlled again. So that little person you saw who was on the screen and who moved around. Thanks, Adwani. And it's a pleasure to write blog entries you find inspiring as well. That little person you saw wandering around on the screen, he's completely within Godot. So if I was to launch the project and show you, he only exists in GD script. So in order to make him work, we're going to need to start adding a player object into the space. I've decided that the player is going to be in the space scene. There are a variety of reasons why this is the case, although it's interesting when I think about it, because I'm going to have to do queries from the player into the little star worlds, and they're a bit of a nuisance too. How about we do actually go ahead and walk through that together? So I think I might have just made these they're okay, but they feel like they've got a smudge in them now. I'm going to walk you through how the little person works, because you'll notice that use E, and as far as I remember, when I walked him around the place, he looked into things. So this is Godot, and it has a scripting window, and in the scripting window we can look at various scripts attached to various nodes, but it's not actually very powerful. I've found personally that VS Code with the Godot plugins works better than Godot does at being a Godot script editor. So that's primarily what I use. I haven't checked recently to see if my modules are out of date. Hold on. There's all sorts of modules here that I use. I think there's one which is for Godot somewhere, Godot Tools. So with Godot Tools installed, VS Code, which is a free editor, VS Code is also actually a really great Rust editor. I was using that and the Rust plugin and the Rust Test Explorer and Native Debug and C++ and Better TomL. Those, which happens to be my name, Tom Lees. These modules allowed me to do all sorts of things with Rust. It was really great, but there's just a little bit more in C-Line that makes it better. So I've switched to that, even though it's a commercial product. I don't mind paying a bit of money for a good tool. And yeah, I bought all the tools. There's like a package of all tools by that manufacturer. I bought them all because the other ones are good too. For instance, ReSharper for C#, or there's a profile, has all sorts of goodies. Okay, so I happen to have the right file already open, which was a nice coincidence. I guess I haven't done anything in here for a while. Control player is the little node that moves around, and if he moved recently, we see if he's currently in a ship, and if he's in a ship, okay, so the logic which detects modules is actually right here in Godot. I couldn't remember if I'd done it in Godot or not. I figure out the direction that he's currently facing, and then I keep asking Rust if there's modules at various positions. So we basically try, it looks like 3 positions. One on the square we're standing, one on the square that's off to one side, and then off to the other side. It seems that's what I'm doing. It's really hacky. And so this is, remember how when I looked at something, it lit up with a little use E? And so this is the code that decides what we're looking at. And there are other functions here like walk to, interact with, process movement. This is what moves the little player. This is all completely client side. Move direction. This is the direction you move when you push forward, I think. Okay. So we have a little puck on screen in Godot that's completely controlled client side, and it really was just like a prototyping thing, so I could put something on the screen and figure out what I wanted the player to do. We've matured beyond that, my friends. We've got the input from the user going into the game and going and controlling the ship. So you'll recall that we had an action, and that action, so that's I've put the scripts over there, and we're going to drop back out of Godot, so I'll quit the editor. So I need to quit the editor if I want to recompile my code later on. The action was player input, I think, and this action in the apply would move a ship, and would move, and the ship it would move was always the first ship, right? And then it would set the position. So the very first thing we want to do is take this logic that took my keyboard keys. So my keyboard keys were the ones on, I was using WASD and also Q and E. ASD were rotating, Q and E were strafing left and right, and W and S were moving up and down. But in the end, I wasn't actually moving relative to where the ship was facing. I was just moving along the relative axes, which of course is just a quick hack. So this is going to be a move ship. So I've just created a routine here inside the action called move ship. I don't think we need this to be static. Oh yes, we do, because we need to polar an input. And first ship was an actor input. Yes, and so actor input was going to tell the ship what to do. So it told it to rotate, make lateral moves. That's a really interesting thing I just realized, is that when you're controlling a ship, you specify rotations and make lateral moves, and you have the actor input. There's no reason why you wouldn't drive a player the same way as you drive a ship. So it could be that we create a player, and a player also has an actor input, and then we just allow the person to embody a player. So if I go into the space class, and I create a new vertical split, and then in the space class I've got a function here called add spaceship. But if I also added another one called add player, I'm going to add them to the world. We don't really care about the ship box or child world, so well later on we're going to care about a child world, because we're going to actually allow the player to snap to the floor of a ship, so that the players don't come out of the ships when the ships move. And as you walk around, it'll keep snapping you to different ships as you enter and exit them, which will be interesting to write the code for. I'm sure future me is going to enjoy writing that. So to represent a human, we're going to need something other than a spaceship. So a spaceship has an X location, a Z location, a facing, bounds, child world. So as I look at the spaceship class, I'm thinking to myself that that X-lock and Z-lock is really a pretty standard thing. I could make a component just to store those, but, you know, let's not go overboard. Alt 1. So let's have a look at where spaceship is in my hierarchy of things. So I've put it inside worlds, inside the spaceship one. No, it's this file is not in there. It's down here inside spaceship. So we might just move spaceship itself into a ship component. We'll move all of this into a ship component module. Mod ship component. And we'll Alt-Enter on this to create a module for it. And here it is. And it's possible that this stuff here was all required by this. And it also needs a component and so on. Oh well, we'll just import that. Import. We want the one from specs. Import cow. This is not the kind that goes moo. It's always time to make a cow noise. Okay, so that's the spaceship component that we've currently been using. We're going to add another one for the player. Okay. Mod. Should we call it player? Should we call it person? Should we call it entity? We call it... It's going to be all sorts of things. I can imagine it being androids. I can imagine it being NPCs, human players. I can imagine it being whatever walks around the place. Bipeds. That's probably the best name for it. Let's call it biped. Right. Create a module for biped. Add. So the module for biped looks a lot like the module for spaceship. So it's got an X-lock, a Z-lock, which is it's like position in space, and a facing, which way it's looking. Doesn't need bounds, doesn't need a child world, doesn't have those things. We're no longer talking about spaceship, we're talking about biped. So we'll change this to biped, and this is biped, and down here is biped. X, Z lock, and oh, I forgot that I still need the child world. So grab the child world line, code really fast, and then put it back in. I can feel some carpal tunnel coming on from all this coding. Need to be careful about that. I blame Diablo 2, that's what gave it to me initially. Diablo 2 and a really bad disk. Weak storage. This disk is just too high for this chair. It's not so great. Okay. Biped needs an X lock, a Z lock, bounds. We don't need bounds anymore. Child world. We're not going to worry about the facing. When we specify these things. So this last part here is using the communications back into Godot. This is my easy way of getting data out of an entity to where I want it to go. It essentially makes a Godot dictionary, and I can define what the keys and variables are here from, and there's only some types that I specify that I'm allowed to have: nuns, nums, floats, strings, vectors, and tuples. With the vectors and tuples are just nested versions of the other ones, and I'll probably add more types here later. But the point is that every one of these types I can turn into a variant, which is the Godot type. But the code here that you see doesn't rely on Godot, doesn't even know that Godot exists. So my entire simulation code stands completely separate from Godot and doesn't require a user interface. So for one, I can run it on the server, but for two, I could create another user interface or another game client. So the part of my client that knows, part of my code that knows about Godot is only this SG core up here. So it's, these files, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 files from my code base know about Godot. So if down the track Amethyst is mature enough, I can probably move the code across quite easily. It'll probably be a big headache. There'll be also GDScript. There's quite a bit of GDScript as well. Yeah. I'm probably not going to move, but I can. And that's, the options are open. I like to have options which are open. Part of the reason I didn't choose Unity is because if I started writing components in Unity, then apparently they're really, really hard to move to other engines later because they're so deeply tied in with the way that Unity works. Amethyst is moving away from specs. What's the alternative? That's interesting. I probably should look into that because I find that worrying. It could be because specs looks frightening. I'm quite happy with specs myself. So it turns out there's no spaceship in spaceship. And the reason why is because I haven't got a pub use here. So I need to put pub use ship component spaceship. And then I also need to go pub. So this is me moving stuff from children back into the parent. But the advantage is that I can move them to other files and so on. And I don't have one big file with lots of stuff in it. But at the same time, everyone else gets a nice API where they can find these things inside the module called spaceship. Okay, so you got bipeds. Now, let's just see if it compiles now. So when I create a new biped, I get back a component, but that doesn't make sense. I want to get back a new biped, so I must have copied and pasted the wrong thing. Down here, when we create a new spaceship, we still take bounds. So this is confusing. I see. So the problem is that this is in the add player function where I don't have access to bounds. I need to add a biped here. Now the thing I want you to notice is that we still have this class here called actor input. And you'll recall that actor input is what we take the inputs from the user into the button presses that move the actor around. And those button presses are important. Okay, so there's a talk about moving to Legion. Okay. Legion ECS evolution. Interesting. Okay, so they say that it's supposed to go faster while making it harder to use. I'm very much sympathetic to faster. I might consider Legion and its effects on my game. It'll be fun reading when I'm not on stream. I look forward to it. I really appreciate that you mentioning that, Togglebit. It's insights like that make this streaming really useful to me. Like personally, straight up, making the game project go faster is when you can provide insights from things you've learned. I'm getting a lot of that stuff from the Discord chat about what people are choosing to do with their own projects as well. So I really appreciate that. Thank you. So what's going on is Togglebit just pointed out in chat that the Amethyst engine is moving from Specs to Legion, which are both ECS frameworks. So they manage all the little bits and pieces. And the code that you see me writing right now is initializing an entity in an ECS framework. So all these things are components, which are like little snippets of functionality, and the ECS holds them all together. But in memory, it spreads them apart into these big blocks. So all the bipeds go in one block, and all the actor inputs in another, and all the positions in a different one. And that has advantages from how you use memory. That's why an ECS is great, and it allows you to do multiple things in parallel in a really nice way. It's quite technical and worth researching. So go research entity component systems, and you'll know what it means. And I won't bore you with any further details now. Okay. actor input position. So this should be enough that we can, if we go and have a look at where add spaceship is used, we'll find very quickly the code in Singleton, which creates these two spaceships here. So these are the two spaceships we know and love. The way this works is that we create a client. This is done. Oh, this is actually the one from a test. Yes, I need to find the other one. Add spaceship. Here's the one I'm thinking of. In Singleton, we create the two spaceships we know and love, and then down here we create the sector. So this is how we create the two ships that you're so familiar with that you see on initialization. We're creating them with code, and the code is these two routines here. So to walk you through it, we create a static sector. So in init once, somewhere down here. Where do I create the sector itself? Build static sector. I can't remember where that's called from. I think it's probably called when the client starts up. Anyway, taking the sector that's currently empty, we create world 1, which is the first ship. Then we get its world and we initialize its map to contain this block of conveyors. So that, and underneath it this, and underneath it that. So that's how we create as a storage container and the conveyors. And then we create a floor with these coordinates. So that's left, right, top, bottom. We're adding a floor, and then we subtract a small portion. And then we recalculate the bounds. And why do we do that? I think that test is actually irrelevant, and it's only there for legacy reasons dash another test. I can't remember why I wanted to know the bounds. It's probably just irrelevant code. And then we create world 2, which is the other spaceship, and it has a more complicated map. And then we build the test starships. So now we take the sector and we jump up to here, and with that sector we lock the space world, and we add two spaceships. Add spaceship, add spaceship, and I'm going to add a player as well. Right now, this code should really be getting, and this code should really be getting invoked by some sort of loading mechanism that's read a database and has found all the entities that are in a particular sector, and is now calling these functions to put them in to the sector to recreate whatever was saved, and another series of functions that do the opposite, that put the stuff into a database to save the sector so it can be loaded later. So loading and saving is another feature that's not yet in the recall singularity, which means unfortunately that whenever the server restarts you lose all your status, which of course is just what I want for testing to do, my friends. So anyway, we're going to add a player. So now you know where the ship comes from. Anyway, so we're going to use world 0. Oh, it's W0 world. So I think world 0 is the world sync, and then the world itself is the... Yeah, there's some complexity here that I don't want to explain right now. If you've watched previous streams, you'll know that it's a sync, lock, and world. We'll create a new player who's inside of this first ship, and that's inside in the sense that it's going to be at the same place that that ship is based, like so. And their child world, we'll set the child world to be the same as this one, like so. That doesn't mean anything yet. Just wondering to myself, do I want to how I want to manage the position? Do I want to specify the position as being relative to this other ship, which I probably do. If a person is inside a ship, then your positions should be relative, and it should probably be possible for the person to be outside any ship and floating standalone, at which point the positions are relative to the origin of the universe, which is pretty trippy. Or they could be in an empty ship of their own. Like, you could say that any person who's floating free in space is essentially in a one-person spaceship, which has no air and no items in it. That would be another way of approaching that problem. Yeah. You know what? I'm not going to worry about that yet. Okay. Does that sound familiar yet? It should sound pretty familiar. It's like my mantra now. We'll worry about that later. Oh, and that, we'll worry about that later too. Okay, so as far as I'm currently interpreting things, this line is supposed to mean that the player starts off in the space world at location 00, which is in the middle of this top ship, which is at -18, -18. So when we're looking at the two ships that get initialized, it's the top of those two ships. I wonder if I should put it in the second ship actually, because the second ship is larger. Okay, and then if I go back to the player input code, I'm pretty sure this is the right code. Yes, I've got this function called move ship, and rather than, did I put the, yes, I'm going to move. The one thing about extract functions in CLion is it always puts them down below, it never puts them up above the function you extract them from. I like them up there, so I'm going to delete this. So this is the one that moves, that moves an actor. So I'll change it from being move ship to being move actor. I'll just use the rename feature, which as well as changing it here, it changes at every possible place it gets called. So it also changed it down here as well automatically. And here we had a search that found the very first ship we could that we're going to move. Now that's for moving spaceships, so I'm going to get rid of this. I'm going to change it, so now we're not looking for a ship, we're looking for a player. So read storage biped. So what we're trying to do is move the very first biped we can find. Why is that red? No, that's happy. Okay, good. So what this means is that the biped's actor input is getting populated. Now, if you remember us moving ships before, you'll know that that's not all we need. We also need something that's going to cause the inputs, like a system that's going to be called regularly, that's going to cause the inputs to actually move this little player around. And then we're going to have to also go into Godot and tell it move something on the screen that represents the player. Essentially, that little player puck thing will move around in Godot. There's a progress bar, it's loading. What are we doing? Biped. Yes, so I realized that if I need to go into space, and in here we initialize this world. It doesn't just have spaceships in it now, it also has bipeds. Like so. So now we're allowed to make biped classes. We need a system that moves those classes. Where did I move them before? I think I moved them in physics before, didn't I? How did I move ships before? That seems about right. Prepare physics. We used to apply an angular force to the body every physics tick according to the actor inputs. So this is something that really should be to do with thrusting ships around. It really shouldn't be in prepare physics. It's one of many systems that gets run on spaceships. So we might just quickly make that into a system, just to keep things clean. So if we look at spaceship, we could create an engines class. So let's do that. So I'm moving this block of code that takes the inputs and moves the ships around. It's the code that's been working whenever I push the cursor keys. I'm just going to put that inside of a spaceship class. So So system engines. We're gonna add that file, and system engines is going to be using, where's space, or was it? I'm pretty sure it was space, or did I call it physics? Yeah, it's using physics. This here. So, what's a nice example of a small component? I probably have some small components around. I like to copy an existing component. Recipe for storage probably has something. No. We'll just use conveyor linking, which is my biggest system, but at least I know which one it is. So conveyor linking is a struct. It wasn't even that, it was conveyor formation was the actual system. The conveyor system in my game is quite complicated, but that's okay because it's a complicated problem. So we create a structure. So it's going to quickly copy this across to system engines. So first thing we need is a structure, and then we implement system for that, and we have something called a system data, like so, and then we create a run function for it, which takes the system data, and as far as I know, that's everything there is to a system. Those three things. Okay. So in our system engines, we want to take the stuff from physics. So physics required those different things. We never ended up using ships and positions in the end. We only needed bodies and inputs, which were these last two. We want a physics body and an actor input. And so we're going to go through all of the ships and we're going to apply these. So the systems data we need is that stuff: write storage, physics body, read storage. So when you define a system, you're defining something that's going to modify components inside of specs. And that thing needs to know which components it's going to modify. And so if specs is ever deciding what things to run, it can look inside a system and see what things each system needs, and it may even run them all in parallel, the ones that use different components that don't conflict with each other, which is pretty cool. So we can move this now, and then this prepare physics code can go away. Is there any reason why I couldn't just delete all of it? Oh, I see, prepare physics took these things as arguments. Okay. So we'll just say that prepare physics doesn't use any arguments, and we'll say it doesn't do any things. I need to put an open curly brace here. Okay. So this system, we have to put A here and A here. So this system should now move the ships. The conveyor formation system. Yeah, that's not quite the right name. Ship engine system. That was just a very brief refactoring for you. We need to put that in space so it gets called. So down the track, I will modify the way that systems get called for these so that they can be called in parallel, maybe, if there's proof that it actually runs faster. Because it's simpler if it doesn't run them in parallel. Update, world maintain, space state, run now. We also want ship engine system to run now. Like so. I think run now is a correct name. I'll use dot run now. I believe so. See, in production floor, when I do updates, I do the same thing there. How they are. All those things are running now. Anyway, so we've got the ship moves. We want the biped to also move. So we'll create a system that moves bipeds based on input. So we can basically duplicate this. So copy, paste. We call this system biped, move biped, add biped move system. Hope I don't regret the fact that I've reversed the name. I might just put move biped system. Moving bipeds I'm not thinking I'm going to use physics for people. And down the track, we could be all sorts of useful reasons to use physics for people. I'll ignore those reasons for now. Move biped system. So we're going to declare a move biped system there. So we want a write storage, and the write storage in this case is going to be to a biped, and the read storage is actor input, and then we're going to ignore all of these things, and we could just say that so this isn't bodies now, this is bipeds. So I'm just interpreting the input. Right, so if we had look at player input again, this is an action that takes the user's key presses, and the action that takes the user's key presses, this shouldn't be called first ship anymore. This should give it a good name. This routine that handles the user's key presses every frame is going to call in here, and it's going to have an instance of actor input. That's whatever the player is currently controlling is going to be the actor input that we've got here. And then based on what buttons they press, we're going to set rotation, lateral X and lateral Y. Now, if you've been watching earlier, you would have seen that these parameters were actually driving the ship, allowing you to fly the ship around. I'm going to reuse the same code to also drive the player and move the player around. The reason why it's not controlling the ship is because this one finds the first ship and controls it. I'll put a new line in here that finds the first player and controls it. And then later on, we're going to have a way of switching what you're controlling by going up to a console and using it, or pushing a key to exit that usage. Which should be pretty sweet. Okay, so for body inputs, join. So this thing body. So this is the list of this run is getting called with a list of bipeds and a list of actor inputs, and given a list of bodies and actor inputs, we're going to get one body and one input, right? Well, here we call it inputs, so I'll leave it that name. This one we'll call biped. Now, each of these different things that the person can do is going to move the player. And to save some time, I can have a look at how we did it in Godot. So in Godot, so one thing we notice in Godot is that I actually normalize the movement of the player. So I do some lerping and normalization. There may be some amount of drifting, so the longer you hold it down, the faster you go. And there's also some ways that the person's viewpoint slowly transitions to face the same way as you're moving based on the X and Y. I don't particularly want to go about copying all this code right now. It's too complicated to do quickly. And I'd rather write that in again once we've got the basics working, so we'll do that. I might have a scaling factor. No, I haven't written a scaling factor for speed. And then somewhere in here we've got, yes, we're using a scaled speed of 4. So every time we move the player, we're multiplying the speed that the user is trying to apply by 4. Although, yeah, we're talking about per tick here, so it's probably 4 divided by 60 is the kind of number we're looking for, because we're doing 60 frames a second in this world. Oh, that's another point, is that even though I'm currently running this world at 60 frames a second, that's how often Godot calls. But the Rust code is still limited to 20 frames a second by other timing code that I haven't shown you yet. So all the physics we've seen so far are running at 20 FPS in the Rust code. So later on I'm going to want to increase that tick rate to a higher speed. And there's no interpolation being done. So when we're rendering, we're not seeing that. Okay. Biped inputs, bodies, active inputs. We're moving the current player. The current player is the biped. The biped is an instance of this guy, biped. So this class. So we want x lock plus equals inputs dot x. What's the type for player input? Uses actor input, which is lateral x. X. So we move up and down the x-axis. Y lock plus equals inputs dot lateral y. Rotation. How do we do the rotation? I don't know. Let's just say plus equals inputs dot rotation, and we'll figure it out. Okay, so now this biped class is going to move around the place. How are we going to know where it is? The most easy way to do that would be to just find all the bipeds and dump them on the screen in terms of debug output, and do it from GD World, and we should be able to just see them moving around. Okay, so we'll just go into Star World link, and we'll go into update ships, which is here. And we'll add another line down here. So we're going to say let bipeds in. So I'm just going to start by copying this line here. So I want read storage for bipeds. Read storage biped to equal the system data from the world. Import the biped class, and then so we're currently in the Godot interface code, by the way, for biped in bipeds. I didn't actually need the brackets here. Dot join. Or do I? Probably do, for join to work properly. So I put brackets around there. That's a tuple. Is one value in brackets a tuple? I don't know. It seems like it won't be. So for each biped, we're going to use go.print, and we're going to specify that biped's info, like so. And so I should be able to see the output data change as I push the cursor keys. If it compiles. What's the chance of it compiling? Yeah, 0. Run server. And that's okay. Rust is here to not compile so that my bugs go away. Use of undeclared type vector3. Okay. So I'm not sure which class I was using in the physics code for vector3. Error. In algebra, so using specs physics and all those things. So Interesting to have algebra force 3 and in algebra vector 3. That's really crazy. Is it just algebra vector 3? Oh, it's specs physics I'm supposed to get this from. Not. I wonder if I'm getting them from the wrong place. Because these are probably coming from the automatic imports. Cannot find value thrust in the scope. Yeah, so when I wrote them out of physics, I probably missed those. Was it? It was physics. Where is thrust? Thrust and rotation. Those are like the two scaling factors for a ship engine system. You know, let's just beef this up even more. I like powerful spaceships. As we make the ships bigger, it's going to need more thrust and rotation anyway. Obviously later on those will be numbers that we derive based on how many engines you've got. We'll probably have a whole cool physics model like around what engines allow you to do. But not yet. We could like have a button I push to say that. The not yet button. Okay. Ship engine system is not found in the scope, and I can't actually import it because it's not public. If I could import it, it would currently be red here, and I could just easily go click click. But because it's not, simulation spaceship. So I just need to add a couple of pub users here. Pub use system engines, ship engine system. Pub use biped system. It wasn't biped I wanted to use it from. It was I don't think I even added a mod for the other file that we added later, which was the system move biped. Okay, and then we need to also add this to space, otherwise it won't move. So here in update, I need this dot run now world. And both of these need importing. Okay, so it hasn't found biped, we'll import that. Cannot find bodies in scope. I called it bipeds. Cannot find value X lock. These X lock and Y lock are inside of biped. So I need to put a biped dot and rotation. No method named join found on this thing. Actor input. Moddies. Oh, it's because I haven't imported the relevant thing. Use create specs join. Wonder why the it's not giving me the right hints in this module. Probably some other compile issue. Actor input is in the wrong scope. Same problem with this not being imported. Down here, function is expected to take an argument. World exec prepare physics. So yeah, we have no need to call prepare physics because it doesn't actually do anything right now. No field Y lock. The reason why it doesn't do anything is because I just moved his body out into another function. If you missed that part. Y lock. Okay, so when I was looking at the type of biped, which we've just defined, X lock and Z lock. There we go, that's the problem. So we're in a Y up world, and so X and Z are the two on the ground plane that we're interested in. So now it's complaining that I need to convert this to type fix64 first. So fix64, this from float. Well, it's not even from float, it's just from. I just need to define into. and into. And it should figure that out. No field rotation. It's called facing, not rotation. We're going to get the same problem into. The reason why is because these are proportional floats. They're like fixed precision, and it's set lower, so it needs to just remind Godot that it's okay to upcast into the larger type. Cannot infer type. Oh, that's annoying. So we're changing them into a fixed 64. And this one, and this one. Expected a type argument. This is so annoying. And this is just me needing to look at the documentation for fixed. Which is my fixed point number implementation. So we have from and into. Just trying to figure out how to change from one precision number to a different one. So I should be able to go fix 64 from and specify this, and then it will convert it to a fixed 64. And it's complaining about the line underneath, so I imagine that means it worked. So we should repeat that process for each of these. So this is because these numbers that I'm converting, inputs.lateral x, inputs.lateral y, these are actually 16-bit numbers, not the full 32 or 64-bit floats that I'm working with here. But the 64-bit float is not a floating point really, it's actually a fixed point number. The fraction point always stays in the same place. So it's actually quite a high precision number as long as you're dealing with numbers in the right range. Which means you won't lose accuracy as you move away from the origin. The accuracy stays the same within the universe, which in itself is quite nice. But there's a boundary where you can't go. That compiled just fine off screen, so now we're running the game. I don't expect to be able to see a player, but I do expect to see a message coming up on probably both server and client. No, just on the client. Not sure why that stopped working. I think because I tried to import join and it got confused and imported it from the wrong place. I restarted the server. I didn't need to restart the server. Okay. Right, the game runs. We should see a lot of spam on here. So you can see that there's a biped at 0, 0 with no facing. So I'm trying to turn them and then nothing happens. So you can see the ship is still moving, and so that means for some reason my changes are still affecting the ship and not affecting the biped. So that sure is interesting. I thought when I went into player input and I changed this to look only for bipeds, and then I went to get the first one, that it still wouldn't find the spaceship, it would find the biped. That's really interesting. So you see spaceships don't have any bipeds, so when we do a join We shouldn't find a spaceship. But what we have got is I've got a second biped, and I've got positions and all sorts of stuff here. I don't want any of this. Maybe what's going on is that when I move the player, I'm actually pulling the ship around, but that seems completely ridiculous. I don't see how that would work. The other possibility is that one of these two, yeah, the system engines. Huh. I meant to change the system move biped class, but I actually changed the system engines class too, to take actor inputs rather than ships. So if you've got a ship that has an actor input, no, that's wrong. I'm getting confused. That's a simple mistake I'm making here. Okay. Yeah, I don't understand what's going on there. It's getting past my bedtime. I can start to feel my brain capacity is just going. I might have to stop soon. Okay. We'll just try and push through a bit longer, and then if... Okay, so the ship's still rotating. I don't get it. The reason why is I expect this lookup to find a different action. Well, it's not that lookup really, it's this lookup here. Oh, I see. This lookup's only finding the first one where we have an actor input, doesn't care whether we have a ship or not. Now the point is I need it to find one where we have a biped. Right? So we need it to find I don't really care what that first member is. I only care about the input. Right? And this isn't first ship, it's first input. And so, in order to actually apply the filter for bipeds, I needed to specify it here in the join. Because I didn't mention it in the join, it was just finding the very first input it could find, whether it was a ship input or a player input. And I want to filter it so it looks for a player. The server's compiling. Now it's running. Let's run the game. Okay, here we go. So, okay, I see the facing number, so I'm pushing the left turn button, it's going down, and I'm pushing the right turn button, it goes up. If I push, that's forwards, and backwards is moving the Z location, and strafe keys are moving the X location. So, you can imagine that if I had a node, and I was taking the node's position and facing, and I was making it match these numbers, it would be walking around the screen right about now. But the difference between this and what we had with the player before, which, you know, you're familiar with this stuff, this is, once again, I'm using the client side only. This was only on one client. So if I moved the player on a different client, it wouldn't see it. But what's special about this is that, so here I am starting a second version of the same game. Bear in mind that even though I've got two clients connected, I still only create one player. We'll have to create different players. So I haven't synchronized the initial states, so they differ right now. However, if I move a player using these keys, okay, so you see them changing here. You don't see them changing down the bottom. So what that's telling me is that I forgot to enqueue the input. Right? There's some reason why we're not applying the inputs on the other client. That escapes me. Because I was expecting to see this client changing even though they never match. Let's try running them both again. Maybe there's some reason why the other one didn't connect properly. There's lots of little problems right now with joining a game shortly after it's created, like not straight away but a little bit later on. I'm not going to bother to fix them just yet. They're all just a matter of running down a list of bugs. Okay, so what we're most interested in are these two logs here. So focus, if you will, on these numbers. Let's see if they stay. Yeah, see, now they're both changing. So there was probably something wrong with one of the clients. So if we were rendering it on both clients, we'd see it change on both clients. You'd see the little person move around. And then, of course, the next thing to do is instead of creating one player at the start, to create one player every time a client joins, and that sort of thing. And then you can start having, a real multiplayer experience where not only are you moving players, you're moving ships, and cool stuff's happening. And then we'll start adding logic. This is stuff we're talking about for next time. We'll start adding logic so that you can go up to a little console and push a button and take over a ship, and only one person can do it at a time, and other things like that. So, what do we do tonight? I think we fixed some problems with the colliders changing when I changed the shape of the ships. I tried to limit the ship to one axis and rotation, but I couldn't get the maths to quite work. We've made the input more flexible and for players and tidied it up a bit. And I think there's some other stuff I did, but I can't remember what it was. Thank you very much for joining me. This was the Recall Singularity, a Space Factory game. Please search for me and read the posts mentioned in chat. And I look forward to seeing you on Discord or Twitter or another stream or something similar. So thank you so much for joining me. Good night.